Hey everyone, welcome to the next episode of Outcomes. I'm your host, Barrett King, which you know by now, and welcome to season 3. So you've already listened to 1 or 2 episodes at this point, and it's a little different than what you've seen in seasons past. I'm going to let the guest actually do their own intro. I always did this quick thing about who they were, but I realized there's more value in hearing it in their own voice. So I'm going to let my guests today introduce themselves. Today we're going to talk about data and the power of data-driven decision-making and partnerships. And more important than anything, I think the way that those data points and the insights that you can glean from what Naomi today, who you're going to introduce in a second, is going to talk about, and how that information can inform really, really good outcomes for your program and for your, obviously, your go-to-market around partnerships. So without further ado, I'm going to let you introduce yourself today. Go ahead.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you, Barrett. I'm Naomi Dreifuss. Lovely to meet anyone who's listening. Thanks for taking the time to hear us today. I'm a salesperson. I've been doing sales for around 9 years in SaaS companies with B2B products, from data products to educational products. And around a year ago, I hit a wall as a salesperson when I was trying to sell with partners. I was totally clueless. I was that bad salesperson who thinks down on the partnership team and who doesn't know how to work well with them. And I lost a lot of money because of it. And I realized, wow, this is a huge problem for the company, for the salesperson, for the partner. Everyone's missing out by not working better together. And that's when I started about a year's long journey to try and figure out what is it that is broken in so many partnerships today, and what can we change to make them actually work better.
I love it. What an intro. See, everyone, it makes so much more sense if the guests introduce themselves versus me doing some abridged version. Look, it's interesting because, and this is why I wanted to have you on, people talk about data a lot, right? It's obviously like a very trendy thing right now, data-driven decision-making. Even just the other day, I posted something on LinkedIn about it. And I think, it's valuable to be mindful of, more than anything, how you use data. So let's talk about certainly what you do. I want to give you a platform for a second here and talk about the brand that you're building. But then I want to get into what we talked about before we hit record, which is sort of these 3 to 5 things that you've been using when you're helping customers and clients think about how to be more intentional, right? To be more specific around partnerships. Because, and I'll stop here, but for the listener, I want you to think about this in the framework of, there's been guests that have come on and shared really good data. There have been folks that have come on and talked about how they've used data. This is sort of the combination of those two. This is going to be some insights and some information, certainly. But I think more important for me and what I'm excited about is it's the tactical piece here, right? It's thinking about your experience in terms of moving from the perhaps questioning sales leader, right? The person who was a little bit unsure of partnerships, which we talk to and hear from a lot in and around the show and in my own personal life, to the person who looks at partnerships as a core part of go-to-market. And I think that's an important shift that we can talk about today. So let's first start with the platform around the brand. What do you all do and what you're obviously working on, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, sure. So maybe actually I'll do it backwards.
Sure.
If that's okay with you.
Definitely.
Let's keep this supernatural. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and say,
Let's do it.
Why the hell should we care about data? Everyone's talking about data. It's normally used as a buzzword. If we're not an analyst or something, how much should data really interfere in your day-to-day work?
It's a great call out.
And then everyone works with it differently, right? Like, I don't know how much you look at your Salesforce or whatever it is that you have as your single source of truth. But I was one of those people who I kept running reports. I had folders of daily reports I had of the leads that I was getting and the sales tactics and all this different stuff going on. And data is messy. There's so much of it. Our organizations are trying to consolidate and do beautiful things with it. But for us personally, we each have different data points that matter. We have different promotions that we're after, different goals that we're trying to get to, different struggles that we're trying to overcome. So we're all looking at different data points. And when it comes to partnerships, because we normally don't have the operations team behind us as you would in a regular sales job, you're limited with how much data you can really bring into one place and look at and what you can actually do with it. You don't just want to be sitting there running reports, wasting time. So it came down to that. At first, the data I wanted to look at and to build Zugit, the company I've started on, was voice of partner data. I kept hearing complaints about partnerships, about partner management, about everything. And no one was telling me what their partners say, what they think, what they want. It was like the only person in the room who no one was talking about, the partner.
And they should know everything, right? I mean, they're the closest to the customer, the problem, they're your tools. I totally agree with you.
If you're in a partnerships job, it's because you know how important your partners are. You should be talking on their behalf. Everything you should be saying should basically be coming from them. And I started asking big companies with incredible teams, what data do you have coming in from your partners? And it was all like transactional, dry, boring stuff.
Yeah, how much have they sold? How many things did they register? Yeah, last integration they did. I agree with you for what it's worth. I think it's very black and white and very me centric. I'm eager to hear how you observe that. Go ahead.
So it was definitely an interesting journey for about 4 months, just looking into what do companies actually know from their partners. And they knew nothing when it came to their competition, why the partners are partnering with the other brands and how that's going in comparison to them, why they're not selling, why they're not engaged. Everything that you want to hear when you walk out the room that someone says about you, they had no idea of. So we started looking into a few surveys and like feedback loops that some companies had. And even then we realized it was all like super safe questions they were asking. It wasn't like going on Glassdoor and reading what do employees really think about your HR department. We wanted to see that about partnerships. What is it really like to partner with Barrett? Like, how is he in supporting us, and how much does he actually follow through with once we've had the whole celebration and posted on LinkedIn that we have a partnership together? So we started on that data to cut it short. And then we realized that we were limited with what we could actually change for a partnership team if we didn't also fix what was going on from the wider spectrum. And that was, they had such a messy data flow of everything. Like the whole infrastructure of really great teams was just a mess. Lots of different platforms who don't speak to each other, some who do, loads of duplicates. And it came to simple questions I would ask people on a call, like, how's your data on your current partners in terms of like the growth of their companies, the people in their companies? There's been a lot of movement in the last few years. Are you tracking that? What about the data outside of your organization, like their marketing metrics, who's visiting their website, stuff like that? And yeah, we just basically pulled that all together. And now what we're doing is we're coming in and we're helping companies understand the voice of their partners, enrich and consolidate the data so they have one single source of truth when it comes to their partnership data, and making it all not a data and reports conversation, but an actionable insights talk where it's basically automating the different workflows that they're doing throughout the day. So there's good data coming in and there's good stuff happening because of it.
Yes, that's smart. So folks, just to be clear, this is not a plug for her business, although you're certainly welcome to, and I encourage you to check it out. This all comes from the fact that we were talking about, partner data, and that there is a misconception, right? And I'm sure all of you that are listening have experienced that, where you come into this dialogue from sales leadership, from marketing leadership, your CEO, whoever it is, and they say, let's talk about, partner insights and partner data and what are our benchmarks. And it's always, what have they sold, or how many integrations did they manage, or some sort of like a platform engagement index. And it's not, and maybe it's sentiment. I want to give credit. Like there are some partner ecosystems that try and measure sentiment in some capacity, but it's very single focus. It's very single dimension, and not, an all-encompassing methodology in terms of the health of the partnership. And I think there's something really interesting if you're listening to this and you're thinking like, but I do that. I would maybe challenge you all to question yourselves and think, do I really do that? Because it's absolutely imperative that when you look at the way that B2B tech and SaaS in general has evolved and how partnerships has become so important to go to market, which again, on the show here, we talk about all the time, you're probably sitting there thinking, what are the data points? What are the things that I should be capturing? And like, let this be your CTA. Let this be your sort of like, loud siren in the background right now. Naomi's going to share some stuff here in a second around how she's observed partner programs and folks in the business do a better job of it. I would encourage everyone to double click. I found this really interesting. So I would love to hear some of your observations. You were talking about 3 to 5 different points of sort of reference. So I'll stop talking. I'd love to have you go.
Yeah, sure. No, I totally love what you're saying. I think that also zooming out is very important, because
exactly.
If you're not tracking something, you're not measuring it. And if you want to, say how important partnerships are, you have to make sure that you're tracking a lot of things.
And being intentional, right? To your point, like it's multidimensional. It's not, did they do X or Y, but are they journeying through X and Y and Z? And I'm saying that anonymously because it might be resell. It might be an engagement with your customers. It might be co-marketing or integrations. There's so many different ways that we partner today. And if you're not thinking about that holistically, to your point, and zooming out to 30,000 feet, actually, it's funny. You triggered something for me that I haven't thought about in a long time. I had a leader who I used to work with many years ago who used to always say, what elevation are you viewing the problem from? I think I've talked about this a while ago in the show, but and the idea was like, most people, especially frontline and second and third tier management, tend to look at the problem from their lens at like 500 feet, 1,000 feet, right? Like they're so close to the issue. And this person used to always say to me, zoom out, go at like 30,000 feet on every Friday at like 9 a.m. and look back at the sort of things you've worked on that week from a higher elevation, bigger perspective on the bigger problem. And it feels like that's what we're talking about today. Like zoom out, capture it all.
Great point. I love it. And again, when you want to show how important your partnerships are, that means, look at it from a product perspective. What kind of feedback are you getting on the product, from the customer support, from the pricing, from all these different elements? If you don't start tracking them now, then when you come to fend for them in a year's time or whatever, you're not going to have anything to back it up as well. So,
and how healthy? Right, you talked about how healthy is that partner's business? How healthy is their marketing and their sales? It's such an important thing for me, and I don't think folks typically do it, to look at. Here's a good example, right? So HubSpot ecosystem, Salesforce ecosystem, Microsoft, all of them, to my knowledge, focus on who your main point of contact is at the partner. Why are we not account mapping our partners? Why are we not doing role-based communication and role-based enablement? And that way you're being very intentional around the marketer needs this messaging and the sales leader needs that messaging. And then looking at, to your point, a perspective of if we're going to run a QBR, not making the QBR about us, but also about them, working in concert with them to develop a framework of KPIs that actually measure the dual success, right? The better together stories that we love talking about in partnerships.
Exactly. But then things like better together stories and that, if it's okay with me saying here, there's a lot of fluff when it comes to partnerships. There's a ton of fluff. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's put like the buzzwordy better together story thing aside. Let's talk for a second. Your partner isn't a partner. Your partner is Jeff, who's trying to get money to buy a new house, or is Sally, whose child's screaming on the other side of the door. Like, these people are going to do business with you, not just because of a very generalized, fluffy together story. They're going to do it because you've actually gone through the right sales motions as you would with a customer, with a prospect. In that way,
it helps them. To your point, it helps them. Like it at its core, this is people helping people. So anyway, I want to hear some of these observations you were describing, these 3 to 5 points. I think it's really important for the audience.
Sure. So the first thing I think I would mention is having a very solid, clear, ideal partner profile. We spoke to a ton of companies. We would start by saying, how many partners do you have? They throw a huge number. Then you say, how many of them are active? They go a little quiet. The number reduces.
Yeah,
and then
usually quite a bit,
you skim down to like, who are your core partners? It comes down to a handful. You have to really be specific on who your ideal partner is, and that isn't something fluffy. You need data to back it. You should have enough, and that's something that we work with teams to find out, is from looking at the performance of your top partners the last 6 months, how do we find things that we should try and duplicate, that we should try and find in our next partners, that we should be targeting partners for? We don't just want to be standing there, come on, we're desperate to find as many partners possible. No, you want to find the right specific partners.
Exactly.
So having an ideal partner profile, because all those who don't suit that and are wasting your time and your team's time,
Right. There's a lot of that, the dead weight.
There's a lot of that, and it's noise. It's just noise, just moving away from the focus. You're not helping yourself or the business by answering them. So that's number one. The other thing, of course, like I mentioned before, is the voice of partner. So voice of partner data is basically, how do we build an NPS score, like have a score on the satisfaction of our partners. It's not just satisfaction. We know they're going to be complaining. It's okay. Everyone's partner does that. But we want to know what's going on in our relationship from a engagement level, from a sales level. Where are their problems? What are they missing out on? What have they asked for? And you have to have a way to collect all of that and to be able to see the trends coming up. If you have a lot of partners who are struggling with the same thing, that's what you should then move your strategy towards working on, not just, a random thing from a playbook that partner peoples are posting about on LinkedIn.
Yeah, common thread, common pain, common opportunity, definitely.
So that would be the second thing. And then I think maybe the last I would put in, which is kind of two, we'll put it together. Let's consolidate it, right? So consolidate your data. Get your data into one place where you can actually be looking at what's going on in your partnerships and have one answer to it. not several different ones. And you want to also then try and elevate this place that you're using as a single source of truth to a place that will also be recognized throughout the organization. If you're using a partnership platform or something that no one else in your company cares about, then they're not going to care about what it says in it. They're not going to be opening the links you send them in the emails after. But if you come and bring it into their world and you try and incorporate as much data as you can and bring it all together to have better, clearer things to show them and to speak on behalf of your work, it will be a lot stronger. So consolidating the data, enriching it, cleaning it up. You shouldn't have records on partners who haven't sold for over a year or 2 years. You should absolutely have a lot of data on those who helped you win your last quarter. So really making sure that you have good data as well.
I think it's perspective. That's the word that kept coming to mind while you were talking. It's the lens of your customer. That's your partner, right? In this example.
Yeah.
And viewing the opportunity and the impact of that opportunity. And then it sounds like in many ways, the way your team perceives that opportunity, doing all three of those things really well by sitting next to them at the table. I love a good analogy because this is how I function as a human. And like, I always picture that, right? If you think about the best conversations you've had over a meal, it's not, I mean, maybe it is, to be clear, but like, driving in the car with fast food, it might be, to be clear. I love a good, chicken nugget here and there. But I do think the best experiences, the most memorable moments are when you're sitting at a table with people that you care about, sharing a really good experience. And that's what we're describing here, because partnerships is such an intimate part of our go-to-market, and we are so interconnected. Understand what's actually happening. That's the theme that I'm taking away from what you're describing. Don't assume. Understand what's actually happening.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that just making the focus point of a partnership the customer rather than the partnership is what's important. Two businesses who are both trying to make revenue, that's not what's bringing a partnership together. The guy who needs your product and your services and wants a blend of them and needs, everything it is that you can bring as a team, that's your focus. That's why you're here. So you got to always be listening to him and bringing him in the conversation. And if one of us can't deliver enough to keep that customer happy, then the partnership isn't right.
It's brilliant. All right. So we're going to capture the data. We're going to clean the data. We're going to optimize it for how our teams and our partners together can be most effective in solving for our customers.
And ideally keep it live and running. Showing things that are like 3 months old is very 2023.
It's very gone, right? I always describe it's like behind us, right? We've already moved down the road.
Yeah.
And, we can revisit if we need to, but it's not valuable. It's not the same perspective. This is great. Well, look, I appreciate the conversation. Super insightful. If folks want to reach out and get in touch, where do they find you? How do they, get in touch with you?
Find me on LinkedIn, Naomi Dreifuss. Really happy to discuss things with other people. I'm learning all the time. So I want to hear the more challenges or the more wins you have, share them with us. We'd love to learn.
Brilliant. Well, thank you again for your invaluable insights.
Thank
and folks,
you.
Thanks for checking out Outcomes. I'm your host, Barrett King. As always, like, subscribe, comment, follow, do all the things social media asks you to do. And I'm always open to feedback. You know that, but I say it every episode. Reach out, share things with me.
I've got to add something, Barrett.
Oh, there's more.
There's more. This content that you share is so good. Anyone who's listening to this for the first time, it was me on the show, so it might have been a really bad one. But look at the past episodes and listen to them and take notes, because there's gold. You just got to tune in and listen to it.
Oh, I appreciate that. I don't think anyone's done that in a long time. Thank you for that. I'm going to change the name of the show to Gold. We're just going to call it Gold Nuggets.
There you go. Yeah, Golden Nuggets.
This has been Outcomes. I appreciate you listening. Naomi, you're great. Take care.